Welcome to a new episode of Out from the Horrorbox. Thank you guys for sticking around. I know I haven't been able to get out too many reviews lately, but I'm gonna get this one out to you. I'm gonna do another scary stories one, so hopefully that'll be enough for you guys. Also, please bear with me. I started doing this before I got a cold, and now, like halfway through, I have a cold, so you may start hearing me sounding a little sick, especially because my nose is a little stuffy. But like I think part of it sounds fine, and then all of a sudden it's gonna be all. But you know, just bear with me. I mean, at least I'm getting something out, even though I am not feeling great. So let's continue. Until the next review, of course. But until then, we got something special today. It's a film that had a little trouble with its premiere, not because of anything bad, or because it like got stalled in production. It's just the premiere date just happened to fall into pandemic year. The pesky pandemic comes back and bites everybody in the butt. So it barely got its release last year. Today we're going to be talking about the 2021 supernatural horror film directed by Scott Cooper and based on the short story The Quiet Boy. This is Antlers.
What is storytelling? Storytelling started with our indigenous people. Can anyone give me an example of a myth or a story they're afraid of? Lucas. What's going on?
We found a part of a man in the woods today.
Part of the man?
I guess the other half was found in the mine. Oh, this has got to be an animal, right?
No animal that I've ever seen.
Something is going on with Lucas. These drawings belong to a student of mine.
This is what was in the mine. It's a diabolical spirit.
Excuse me, this is a myth.
For you, yeah.
Nakanigejik, always again go out, Wendigo.
He's not your responsibility.
He has no one. He is my responsibility.
He'll come for me. He needs me. He's here.
In a small town in Central Oregon, Frank Weaver runs a meth lab out of an inactive mine. While his 7-year-old son Aiden waits outside in his truck, Frank and an accomplice are attacked by an unseen creature. 3 weeks later, 12-year-old Lucas Weaver, Frank's eldest son and Aiden's older brother, spends his time roaming the town, collecting roadkill and killing small animals before taking them home. Lucas's teacher, Julia Meadows, is alarmed by his strange behavior and frightening drawings, and attempts to bond with the troubled boy. She begins to suspect that Lucas is being abused and becomes determined to help him. Spurred by her own experience of childhood abuse at the hands of her mentally ill alcoholic father. Since her father's recent suicide, she returned home to be with her brother Paul, who is the local sheriff and whom she feels guilty about abandoning when she was younger. Julia visits Lucas's rundown home and hears strange sounds. A flashback shows Frank survived the attack and set up a locked room after returning home with Aiden, who was also attacked, demanding that Lucas should keep them locked inside no matter what. Lucas is feeding his sickly and now ravenously feral father and brother with the animal carcasses he retrieves. Half of the remains of Frank's accomplice were found in the woods by former Sheriff Warren Stokes. Paul and Warren later discovered the other part of Frank's accomplice in the mine, along with a part of an antler. Meanwhile, Julia pressures the school principal, Ellen, into paying Frank a visit. Ellen discovers the room where Frank and Aiden are locked up, which she unlocks and enters. Frank kills Ellen before Antlers burst out of his body. Frank, now transformed into a savage antlered creature, kills Lucas's school bully Clint Owens when Lucas is harassed by the boy. Ellen is reported missing, and Julia visits the Weaver house, where she finds Ellen's car. The police arrive and discover Ellen's body along with Frank's, which is now a charred husk. Aiden is nowhere to be found. When Lucas returns home, he is taken to the hospital, where Julia and Paul are told he is severely malnourished, dehydrated, and shows physical signs of having been abused for years. Julia decides to let Lucas stay with her. The next day, when Lucas recovers in the hospital, Julia and Paul pay Warren a visit and show him Lucas's drawings. Warren identifies the figure as a Wendigo, a legendary Algonquin creature that appears as a ravenous, cannibalistic spirit and jumps from person to person. It can only be killed when it is weakest, as it is feeding and to extinguish its beating heart. Clint's body is discovered that night. Lucas is discharged and learns that Frank is dead. He tells Julia that Frank is coming for him, to take him down to the mine to be with Aiden. The transformed Frank uses Aiden to lure Paul's fellow sheriff Dan out and kill him. Julia and Lucas hide while Paul is badly wounded. Lucas escapes to the mine, and Julia and Paul follow, armed with a pistol. Inside, Julia discovers Lucas and Aiden and sees that Frank has indeed become a Wendigo, currently feasting on a dead black bear. After a fight, she kills the Wendigo, possessed Frank with Lucas's help. The Wendigo spirit passes into Aiden, and Julia stabs Aiden to death, seemingly ending the curse. Sometime later, Paul and Julia discuss keeping Lucas with them for a while, despite concerns he may become possessed as well. As Julia and Lucas leave, Paul begins to cough up a black bile, as Frank had when he first was possessed by the Wendigo. So to get into a little bit of the production, so it was announced back in 2018 that Guillermo del Toro would produce this film, and it was going to be directed by Scott Cooper, obviously, and star Keri Russell, and it began filming in British Columbia. They got Jesse Plemons on board, and then they filled in the rest of the cast. And principal photography started, in 2018, in October, and finished in November of 2018. So unfortunately, this film was scheduled to be released April 17th of 2020, but was removed from the release calendar due to COVID-19, of course. So it was removed and rescheduled to February 2019, 2021, before being removed from the release calendar again. It was released digitally December 21st, 2021. It did have its premiere at Beyond Fest in LA on October 11th, 2021, and was theatrically released October 29th, 2021. It just kind of sucks that it got pushed back more than a year, just because of this pandemic, not just because. So here's a little trivia behind the movie. Scott Cooper had previously directed Christian Bale in the Western Hostiles. Native American themes and issues are quite important to me, Cooper says. In order to stay true to the Wendigo legend, Cooper worked with one of the foremost authorities on the mystery of the Wendigo, Grace Dillon, professor at Portland State University. She said to me, Scott, the Wendigo can manifest in many ways, but its first and foremost is a spirit. And then in reading the screenplay, she and I discussed that this is a monster or a creature of God that kind of reflects our own demons and feeds off of our worst potential. He continues, the Wendigo represents kind of a surrogate for the issues that people would rather not confront. Which, I mean, I completely agree, and I'm glad that they kind of stuck to that, and they kind of cited that it is like a cannibalistic spirit, and that's pretty much what it is. It inhabits like a person's body, and it's about how they just have this unfathomable hunger, and they stuck to that. When Frank's face finally slips off, it's revealed that the Wendigo face is more of a cracked deer skull with jagged teeth set like a crocodile-like skull. Director Scott Cooper says, I thought it was a really beautiful design creature and also terrifying. One of the interesting design elements is the lack of eyes, because you can't really negotiate with something that doesn't have eyes. Which is true, that's one thing you learn when you're like writing stories or anything to do with like coming up with like stories like this. Like the like that's why I think xenomorphs work the best in like Alien, is because they don't have at least like eyes that you can see, and so it looks less human, and you can't really. That's why like a lot of killer like Michael Myers wears a mask and his eyes are darkened, and then like Jason, obviously you can't really see his eyes. Creatures that like the eyes you can't see or they glow. That's why a lot of times that's what makes them a lot more creepier and scarier, is because like you can't like you're the human mind and the human body is built to recognize faces, and so eyes are like the main thing we see, because we usually see like different emotions in eyes. You know, you usually see someone if they're like sad or upset, or they're happy, or they're like they're just a lot of expressions are conveyed through eyes, and so when something doesn't have eyes, that obviously would like cause you to freak out. Like that's why I think that's why that works a lot in this film and makes it a lot creepier, is that you can't see where it's looking, and you don't know what it's looking at. For the physical look of the Wendigo, director Scott Cooper got together with producer Guillermo del Toro, Shane Mahan, and creature concept designer Guy Davis. We talked about how we would make this Wendigo pay homage to the Native American folklore, which we know is a kind of deer-like creature with antlers. And we discussed that it felt like our Wendigo should come from the Earth's core, from its mantle, and that it should evolve out of a coal mine or iron ore mine, Cooper says. We wanted it to represent a couple of things: the destruction to our natural resources, but also a metaphor for how we're destroying not only our bodies and our minds and our souls, but also the earth in general. Shane Mahan shares how growing up in Michigan, there was a very profound Native American influence there. He says creating the Wendigo character was brand new territory for him. I'd always known what a Wendigo was from books and things, but here at Legacy Effects, never got a chance to do one. So you can only do versions of werewolves and vampires so many times. They wanted to make something, in Mahan's words, super eerie and frightening, that also would serve the story. If you're a down and out person and you're just a mess, you're a vulnerable vehicle for the spirit to take over. In addition to highly detailed 3D concepts being worked out by legacy effects designer Jared Kretschewski, Mahan emphasizes the importance of the color palette that drove the look of the Wendigo. We were doing color explorations based on Guy's art, which was kind of colorful, kind of blues and reds. Mahan continues, at one point Guillermo said, it's a god, it's iron ore, it's dirt from the earth. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So when we started using elements of the earth, Julie discovers that the only way to kill the Wendigo is to cut out its glowing heart. Actress Keri Russell would actually cut into the creature's chest to reach the organ. To accomplish this, Shane Mahan says, I had to put in a piece of skin that was a gelatin piece and rig it and get ready to have her cut the gelatin with a knife. And then she pulls out its heart. The Wendigo doesn't really have entrails. It has brambles, thorns, and pieces of sticks and grass. That's what comes out, continues Mahan. So the heart was in there, and it had a little smoke tube in it. It had a pumping device, and she could cut into the chest, pull out the heart, cut it free, and hold the heart in her hand, he says. That was really tremendous fun to do. And then you could reset it. After each take, the Legacy crew would have to, as Mahan describes it, frantically put it all back in and put all the rambles back into it. I think we did 5, 6, 7 takes of that to get it just right. For some shots, digital effects would be used. Man gives an example. Sometimes, like when she's piercing through the heart, there are areas where you augment, which was done by Mr. X and visual effects supervisor Dennis Berardi's team. Mahan says the Antlers shoot had a tight schedule. We had to shoot the mine fight in, I think, 3 days is all. He laughs. Of course, you always want more time, and you need more rehearsal and rigging to do whatever you can. But the crew in Vancouver were great, he says. The stunt team and the wiring team helped a lot, which is awesome. I love that they use a mix of virtual effects, CGI, and then like practical effects, because I think that works the best for pretty much anything when you have a mix of practical and special. I think that's what we're like. I know like Disney uses that a lot, especially with Star Wars now. It's like this. It's like, well, I mean, even back then, like this just this combination, because it gives this sense of like weight of her actually cutting out the heart, right? And then also like this. I mean, then you can add in whatever you want after. You can add in as much, but like having her really cut into something gives it more weight. Having her pull something physically out and hold like a prop, but then like you go in and just you add little details later to make it glow or to make it like look like it's beating or like steam's coming off of it. That's just, I think that makes it so much better than just nothing but special effects, because special effects are okay, but when it's just special effects, you can tell that it's like there's nothing really there, and it feels unauthentic in a lot of ways. To achieve the Wendigo steaming breath, Shane Mahan says there was a tube in the nose that actually shot out hot steam, not smoke, but hot steam. So there was a device on the floor that followed this creature that blew steam that was about 300 degrees out of its nose. And after doing that for 5 or 6 times, the plastic around the nose started to get a little soft. So I was like, hey guys, just lay off the steam, give it a few seconds to get cold again. For the Wendigo's gross brown drool, Mahan used something different than the common methicellulose. I cannot. Methicellulose. There were tubes that ran coffee that were constantly dripping. We made coffee by the gallons, so it was like dripping iron, like a smelting pot. The creature was like an iron ore foundry, so hopefully that comes through. Which, you know, I would say does. Like, you get the sense that this thing's made from like the earth and from the forest, which is, I mean, that's exactly what they're going for, and they accomplished it. I love when, you know, you're going for something and that's exactly what comes through. In the abandoned mine, Lucas's father, Frank, is infected by the spirit of the Wendigo, which slowly grows inside of him. Frank's journey from victim to Wendigo's eventual emergence from his body would be done in 3 stages. For the first stage, actor Scott Hayes was made scruffy with a set of vacuum-formed, nicotine-stained teeth. Miller says, this was brilliant because it saved a lot of time and effort by not requiring tooth stains and requiring to maintain that throughout the whole day. The second pair of teeth It made for the actor to take home ahead of the shoot so he could practice speaking with them. For the second stage Frank makeup, Miller added a forehead appliance and wig. Miller says Hayes was painted with a little bit of marbling and mottling and veining. Some redness around the eyes, just making him look a bit sicker. The forehead appliance covered Frank's brow. He wanted the forehead appliance to start the transformation into the next stage, which was very extreme. If we hadn't used something to manipulate his skull structure, the jump from Frank's human look into the kind of mid-creature look would have just been too jarring. So it was a subtle appliance, but it had some 3D veins sculpted into it. The brow was a bit more pronounced. Temples were sunken in, and his wig was pulled back so it looked like the hair was receding a little bit. Again, Frank would wear the gross, discolored teeth. The third stage transformation makeup included a full cowl appliance consisting of forehead, cheeks, neck, and lip. The hair was punched into the cowl, so no wig was needed there. We wanted the hair to look really thin and wispy, like he was losing big chunks of hair. The third makeup also included, as Miller describes it, big monster teeth, contact lenses, and all the rest was painted from the neck down. Below was just all painted, integrated into those silicone appliances. Once on set, in a situation similar to the principal booth corpse, Miller would punch up the colors, painting on the Frank appliances to register better in the attic lighting. No prosthetics were used for Frank's torso. Miller says Hayes went through an intense weight loss program. He lost as much weight as he could, and then during his performance, he would do his best to stick his chest out and suck in his stomach so we could see his ribs. We went in and exaggerated all the highlight and shadow. So it was a marriage between his physical acting, his weight loss, and our makeup. The eerie glow inside of Frank's chest that represented the Wendigo's heart would be added later by VFX. Miller says Alice FX only used silicone, not foam latex, for Frank's appliances. With silicone, you can bang out more appliances daily than you can with foam because you're not waiting on the baking process. So it's quicker than that way too for production. Which is crazy because I would say that all of that together adds this great look to the process from when he's transforming from this to that, from human to monster. It works perfectly because you just see this deterioration from human to beast or whatever it is, or spirit and a monster, creature, whatever you'd like. And it works perfectly for the movie. It works so great. I think there's just so now I think I'm just gonna get into my personal thoughts. I love this movie. This movie was so good. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it and you're listening to this, I don't know why you are without watching it. I think it's good, and it ends on a note where they could, if they wanted to, make another one. But honestly, you don't need another one. I think it works perfectly the way it is, to just kind of be like, something like this thing doesn't die. This thing keeps going. It's going to pass on from person to person, constantly. It's a spirit. It's not going to go away. I think Jesse Plemons was pretty good, and this Keri Russell is great. The little kid is great. I think like his part was written smartly. Like he's not. I mean, he gives enough like to where you can tell like he's afraid of like what they're becoming, but he's also understanding like they're his family still, so he doesn't want to leave them. He doesn't want them to go away. That's why he doesn't tell anybody what he's going through, and like that's evident in his story of like the bears, where it's like, oh, the dad bear and the brother bear are like different now, but like he still lives with them and he's still taking care of them because I mean they're his family. Like what else would he do, right? I mean, like he's a little kid, he doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't understand that, like, I mean, even to the point where like he didn't want to tell anyone because he knew that they would kill like the dad, and then eventually, they'd have to kill his brother. The brother's the one who he really cared about because that's the one that they were told, like, you have to take care of your brother. And I think it parallels with um, Keri Russell and their characters so well. Like, because the thing is, she left her little brother to suffer with an abusive father, and like it shows that like abuse is just this like cycle, just like the monster, just like this thing that takes over people, and it's just constantly there, and it's constantly hurting people. And I think it works so well on many different levels. And I love that it's not overly long. It gets to the point. It's I think it's like an hour and a half, but like or two, maybe 2 hours. I don't even think it's 2 hours, but I think it works for what it is. And as a story about the Wendigo, I think it works perfectly. And I think that has to do with the director, the cast, the crew, everyone, the visual effects. You know, everyone working on it, and then including like Guillermo del Toro's input, because I mean, obviously, look at what he did with even when he doesn't direct something, but just anytime he's involved with something, it's so good. Like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is perfect. It and he didn't even he all he did was produce that. I mean, look at his past few movies like Shape of Water, awesome. Nightmare Alley was amazing. Like those, well, Shape of Water won for Best Picture, and then Nightmare Alley was nominated for Best Picture. And it goes to show, like, he knows what he's doing. He has an idea, even if it's not entirely his idea. But when you ask for his input, he's like, "Oh yeah, this is what it should be. This is how it should feel." Or you're giving me these concepts. Here's my idea, and that's why I love Guillermo del Toro so much. I've loved all of his movies since I saw Pan's Labyrinth, and that movie too, amazing. But this movie is so good. I wish I had seen it in theaters. I didn't see it in theaters. Like I watched it when it was, right not too long ago on HBO. Um, but if you have a chance and you want a movie to watch, just like to be entertained, to be scared, I highly recommend this one. I mean, this is just like a one-off film, but it's great. I mean, it's so good. I just it was good from beginning to end. I could gush about this all day because it's so good. There are parts where it's a little bit slow. There are I think that like the bully gets dealt with a little too easy. But other than that, I mean, everything is set up perfectly. Like it from the beginning, where the mine, it kind of sets everything up, and then even to like having to kill it, like I mean, like no one really survives its attack except for Keri Russell. But the only reason why she does is because the little boy's there, and like it's like trying to protect it too, and then she's able to finally kill it. Well, with the help of the little boy. See, it's like it's just so good. But yeah, guys, thank you for listening. Um, I know that I haven't been able to get out too many reviews in the past couple months, but I mean, this next month I'm gonna have something special starting on. And this is a little hint. May 13th. I wonder what day that is, you guys. Look it up. But until then, yeah, I mean, you should go follow me on Instagram at horrorbox. Sorry, horrorbox. That's at horrorbox. I'm sorry, podcast. And yeah, and you can DM me there. You can I don't really post too much. I try and get that, but I'm not great at social media. I'm terrible at it, so please forgive me for that. But if you do have your own like spooky stories, anything that's supernatural, anything that's paranormal, or someone else's story that they want to tell, but they or even like your own like fictional story, I'd love to read those too. Or Let's see. Or if you have any recommendations too, like of something that you'd want me to review. I'll take that into consideration too. You can also email me at it's horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com, and you can let me know through there too if there's anything particular you want me to talk about. I'm always down for that as well. So yeah, until next time, you guys, we'll find out what's coming out from the horror box.